In this video, I'm going to give you the ultimate guide to reasoned action theory, which is the world's foremost theory of persuasion and behavior change. If you're a student and you watch this video, I can guarantee you'll do well on any test or homework assignment that involves this theory. And if you're a practitioner of persuasion and behavior change, after watching this video, you'll be more effective at your job. Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Lambert from How Communication Works. This is a channel where I teach you about communication skills so you can improve your relationships, succeed at work, be more confident, and lead a more fulfilling life. One of the most common functions of communication is to change people's attitudes and to change people's behavior, what we commonly think of as persuasion. Persuasion is important in almost every interpersonal and a business interaction where we have to try to influence people. It's ubiquitous. It happens all the time, and it's important to be able to be good at it. There's one theory that dominates the modern scientific discussion of persuasion and behavior change. And that theory goes by a couple of different names, but it's still the same theory. It's called reasoned action theory, or the theory of reasoned action, or the theory of planned behavior, but it's all the same. And in this video, I'm going to describe it for you. So why might you want to learn about the theory of reasoned action? First of all, you might want to change people's behavior. So I study health, so I'm often thinking about how do we get people to adopt healthy behaviors or stop unhealthy behaviors. And this is an important topic that I teach to my students. So that's one reason you might want to learn it. You might be interested in the underlying psychology of behavior change. That is, how do attitudes and beliefs and intentions relate to behavior? This theory explains those connections. And finally, in your job, it might be your responsibility to change people's behavior, to get them to buy something or to click on something or to start some behavior or to stop some behavior. And this theory will help you target those persuasive efforts. So let's start with some general definitions of the main terms. One of the main terms in the theory is belief. And if you look at the slide here, a belief is the probability that an object has some attribute. In the context of the theory of reasoned action, it's normally the belief that some action or some behavior will lead to some consequence. Something like, I think if I eat donuts at every meal, I will gain weight. That's a belief about donuts. Another key term in the theory is attitude. An attitude is an evaluation of some object. In our case, it's an evaluation of some behavior, and normally it's an evaluation of the consequences of a behavior. So it might be something like, I believe that eating donuts at every meal is bad for me. That would be an attitude towards eating donuts. I give a more technical definition in the slide from Fishbein and Eisen, a disposition to respond favorably or unfavorably towards some psychological object. That's a textbook definition. I think just the idea that an attitude is an evaluation of some behavior in this case. Is it good or bad? Is it helpful or harmful? Is a useful definition. And a third key vocabulary term in this theory is an intention. An intention is the readiness to perform some behavior. Now, in technical academic discussions of the theory of reasoned action, you'll often see an equation that includes all of these terms. So I want to define each of these terms in turn. So a behavioral intention, that's your readiness to perform some particular behavior. An attitude is the evaluation of the behavior. Subjective norm is whether I think other people want me to perform the behavior. And then there are the components of these things like beliefs, evaluations, normative belief, and motivation to comply. I want to describe each of those in more detail in turn. Whenever you hear a discussion of the theory of reasoned action or the theory of planned behavior, it won't be long until you see a chart like the one I've put on the screen now. This is from Fishbein and Eisen. This is a typical diagram of the theory of reasoned action, or in this case, the theory of planned behavior, which shows the links between beliefs, attitudes, intentions, and behavior, or beliefs, subjective norms, intentions, and behavior, or at the bottom, beliefs, perceived behavioral control, intentions, and behavior. These are the main components of the model, and you'll often see it diagrammed this way. So I'll explain each of these in a little bit more detail, but you can see from the model that attitudes are a function of beliefs and evaluations of outcomes, subjective norms are a function of normative beliefs and motivation to comply, and perceived behavioral control, or self-efficacy, is a function of control beliefs and the power of those control factors. And all those things, attitudes, norms, and perceived control, lead to intentions, which is the readiness to do the behavior, and then the intentions lead, although imperfectly, to behaviors. So that's the theory of reasoned action in a nutshell. Here's a more detailed diagram of the same theory where you see what are the factors that actually lead to our beliefs. So things like personal factors, demographic factors, environmental factors, which lead to our beliefs, which then in turn lead to our attitudes, norms, and so on, which lead to our intentions, which lead to behavior. The theory of reasoned action is actually a mathematical model. And on the slide that I'm showing right now, these are the equations that allow you to predict behavioral intentions. That's the BI in the equation as a function of attitudes and subjective norms. This is just the theory of reasoned action. If you add control beliefs, that makes it the theory of planned behavior. And then there's an equation for intentions, which is a function of attitude and subjective norm. There's an equation for attitude itself, and then there's an equation for subjective norms. And then there's this idea of salient outcomes, which is which outcomes are actually important to a person engaging in a particular behavior. So if you're thinking about the behavior of going on a diet, the important outcomes might be things like health outcomes, appearance outcomes, difficulty, cost. These might be the salient or important or relevant outcomes. And when we think about subjective norms, that's what other people, what I think other people want me to do. We have to think about, in addition to salient outcomes, there's this idea of important others. Because in this theory, we think about subjective norms, which is what I think other people want me to do. Well, I don't care about all other people. I care about the important others. When you think about the theory of reasoned action, you have to identify the important others who are likely to influence the behavior in question. And finally, there's the question of whether the behavior is under volitional control. So the theory of reasoned action or the theory of planned behavior, these are rational theories of volitional behavior, meaning behaviors we can do voluntarily. There are some behaviors which we might be coerced to do or which are not under our control at all. And this theory won't predict those behaviors. This theory predicts behaviors that we either do or don't do voluntarily. So let's start with the highest level equation in this theory. It says that behavioral intentions are a function of attitudes and subjective norms. So we already know what behavioral intention is: our readiness to do a behavior. Attitude is our evaluation of the outcomes of the behavior, really. And subjective norms are what I think other people want me to do. So think about this. I'll simplify even more. Attitudes are, do I think the behavior is a good idea? Do I think the behavior will lead to outcomes that I personally value? That's my attitude towards the behavior. So if we're thinking about predicting someone's intention to exercise, their attitude towards exercise is a function of all their beliefs about whether exercise will lead to outcomes that they desire. If a person thinks exercise will lead to a lot of outcomes that they desire, the person has a positive attitude towards exercise. If they think that exercise will lead to a lot of outcomes that they don't like, then they will have a negative attitude towards exercise. So an attitude is just our positive or negative evaluation of the behavior in question. Subjective norms is just the sum across all of the important people in our life of whether we think those people want us to do the behavior. So when it comes to exercise, we might think, well, does my partner want me to exercise? Does my doctor want me to exercise? Does my mother want me to exercise? Do my friends want me to exercise? And the sum of all those is the subjective norms. So think in very simple terms, our intentions are a function of, do I think the behavior is a good idea? That's attitude. And do I think others who are important to me think that behavior is a good idea? That's subjective norms. So it's a very simple intuitive theory when you think of it that way. So let's break down attitudes one more time, mathematically. So this mathematical function says attitudes, A, equal the sum of belief strength times outcome evaluation for each of our beliefs. So when we think about a behavior like exercise, I may have many beliefs about exercise. Something like, I believe exercise makes me sweaty. I believe it's expensive to exercise. I believe exercise leads to injury. I believe exercise causes weight loss. I believe exercise will make me look better in my clothes. I believe exercise will allow me to sleep better. All of these are beliefs that I might have about exercise. And for each of these beliefs, there's a strength associated with this belief. And you can think of that strength being, I'm certain that this behavior will lead to this outcome, or I'm not at all, or I'm certain that it won't lead to the outcome. So we can think of there being a strength associated with each belief. So I can say, I'm certain that if I exercise, I will be healthier. I have a high degree of certainty. Another one might be, I believe that exercise leads to injury. Well, I'm much less certain about that. I have a lower belief strength. So belief strength is like the certainty of the belief that some action will lead to some outcome. And then there's the outcome evaluation. And that is the outcome in question. Is it something I like or dislike? So when we stick with our exercise example, I believe exercise will make me healthier. That's an outcome I value. Or I believe that exercise will cause me to lose weight. That's an outcome I value. I believe exercise will lead to injury. Oh, that's an outcome I don't value. So you can imagine multiplying our belief strength, that's our certainty, times our outcome evaluation, whether I like it or not. And you can imagine this outcome evaluation has like a positive or a negative value. A positive if I like the outcome, negative if I don't like the outcome. And you multiply the strength, that is your certainty, times your preference, do you like the outcome or not? And you do that across all of the beliefs, and you sum that up, and that's the mathematical way that you arrive at this computation of your attitude score for a particular behavior. Similarly, or analogously, subjective norms, there's also a mathematical function for subjective norms. And it's that subjective norms are the sum of the product of normative beliefs and motivation to comply across each important other. Now, in the previous equation, we were summing across every belief. In this equation, we're summing across each important other person in our life with respect to this behavior. So if we're thinking about exercise, maybe the important others in my life, when I think about exercising and whether I should or I shouldn't, I think about, my friends, my partner, my children, my parents, my doctor, my exercise coach. These are the people who I might think whose opinions matter to me when it comes to exercise. So they are the important others in my life. And for each of these people, I will have two psychological kind of values. One is this, my normative belief. That is, for this person, let's imagine my doctor. Do I believe my doctor wants me to exercise? That's my normative belief. And you can imagine that ranging on a scale from +3 to -3. So +3, I'm certain that my doctor wants me to exercise. -3 is I'm certain my doctor doesn't want me to exercise. So my normative belief for each important other is just, does that person want me? Do I think that person wants me to do the behavior in question? And do I think my mother wants me to exercise? Do I think my kids want me to exercise? Do I think my friends want me to exercise, etc.? For each of those, I'll have a value on this continuum. At the same time, there's this thing called motivation to comply. And all that is how much do I want to do what this person wants me to do? Now, I've already said these are the important others in my life. So generally, these are people whose opinions I value or influence me, but to a greater or lesser extent. So again, I go through the list of important others and I ask myself, when it comes to exercise, how much do I want to do what my doctor wants me to do? How much do I want to do what my mother wants me to do? How much do I want to do what my children want me to do? What my friends want me to do? What my partner wants me to do, etc. And then we take the product, normative belief that's on a scale of +3 to -3. Do I think my doctor wants me to exercise? Motivation to comply on a scale of +3 to -3. How much do I want to do what my doctor wants me to do? I multiply those, and then I do that for every important other person. I sum them up, and that gives me the numerical value for subjective norms. One digression on subjective norms. The scientific literature on this now says there's two kinds of norms. There are injunctive norms and descriptive norms. Injunctive norms are what I think other people think I should do. Okay? So that's why I feel an injunction to do these things, because I think other people think I should eat kale. Other people think I should wear my seatbelt, wear a bike helmet, put batteries in my smoke detector, wear a mask, something like that. That's an injunctive norm, my sense of what other people think I should do. Then there's a sense, it's my perception of what other people think I should do. The truth may be different. And this gets to descriptive norms. So descriptive norms are what I think most people do. If I look at something like wearing masks, I'm recording this in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So the injunctive norm, my injunctive norm says to me, I think most experts want me to wear a mask. My doctor would want me to wear a mask. Maybe the people I care about want me to wear a mask. Public health experts want me to wear a mask. So my injunctive norm is definitely, people think I should wear a mask. The descriptive norm is my belief about what other people actually do, not what they say I should do. So I look out at the world and I say, are people wearing masks? If not very many people are wearing masks, then I have a descriptive norm that says, most people aren't doing it. And that influences my decision about whether I should do it. So two kinds of norms, injunctive and descriptive. Another thing here, which is that the link between intention and behavior. Normally, the link between intention and behavior is very strong. If you ask people their voting intention, for example, in the month before an election, it's a very, very, very good predictor of their actual voting behavior. The same for lots of consumer behaviors and other kinds of personal and health behaviors. Intentions are generally strongly correlated with behaviors, but not perfectly. Our intentions can change between the time someone asks us about our intentions and the time we do the behavior. Someone can ask us in a research setting, they can ask a sloppy question about our intention, and therefore it's not well correlated with our behavior. Or sometimes the behavior is not under volitional control. So I sometimes ask my students, how many of you intend to get an A in my class? Well, they might all raise their hands, but the ultimate decision is up to me. They can decide how much they study and stuff like that, but they don't actually do the grade. Or another way of thinking about a behavior that's not under your volitional control, you could say, do you intend to be married within the next 5 years? You can intend to, but it takes 2 people to get married, so it's not completely under your control. So there's one important difference between the theory of reasoned action, which came first, and the theory of planned behavior, which is the more modern, current version of the theory. And that difference is the addition of this idea of perceived behavioral control, which is also, you can think of as self-efficacy, or the belief that I'm actually capable of doing the behavior in question, like exercise. So perceived behavioral control is also, there's a mathematical function of perceived behavioral control in the model, and it's very much like the other two. It's a function of 2 things, control beliefs and power of control factors. So control beliefs are things like a belief about whether certain things will be an obstacle to my exercising. Like, I believe you need expensive equipment to exercise, or I believe you need to be in great shape already, or I believe you need professional guidance to exercise, or I believe you need to be flexible, or I believe you need a lot of time. Any of those beliefs about exercise influence the sense, the extent to which I think exercising is within my control. And associated with each of those beliefs is what they call power of control factors, which is really just the belief, how powerful is this factor in either stopping me from doing the behavior or enabling me to do the behavior. So if I think that you need expensive equipment to exercise, and I think that basically without expensive equipment you can't exercise at all, I think that factor has lots of power. Then I multiply those and I sum those up across all the control factors, and this summed value gives me perceived behavioral control. And you just add that into the model along with attitudes and subjective norms. And this allows you to account for some behaviors which are not completely under volitional control. So for example, if you're examining whether people want to eat fresh fruits and vegetables, there are many people in the United States, for example, where fresh fruits and vegetables are not easily accessible to them. They live in a food desert. Fresh fruits and vegetables are too expensive, or they live in a situation in a dormitory, or they live with their parents and they don't get to shop for the groceries, where the food selections are not under their control. When you add perceived behavioral control, you can still use the theory of planned behavior to predict intentions and behavior, even though the behavior isn't perfectly under volitional control. If you want to know how to use this theory to actually do persuasion and influence other people, I've done another video that explains how you use each of these factors to design more persuasive messages and which sorts of persuasive strategies have the most evidence for being effective. And I'll link to that video above. So in summary, this is the theory of reasoned action, or the theory of planned behavior. It's basically the same thing with the addition of these control factors. So behaviors are linked to our intentions. The immediate precursor to our behavior is our intention. That is our readiness to do the behavior. Intentions themselves are linked to attitudes and subjective norms and control beliefs. Attitudes are a function of the probability of certain outcomes and whether we prefer or don't prefer those outcomes, whether we positively or negatively value those outcomes. Subjective norms are linked to normative beliefs. That's my beliefs about what I think other people want me to do, and my motivation to comply with those other people. How badly do I want to do what those people want me to do? And then there are control beliefs, which are a function of what factors influence my ability to do this behavior and how powerful is each of those factors. So all those things sum up to influence intentions, and then intentions influence behavior. So although it looks really complicated and the mathematical formulas scare a lot of people who are encountering this theory for the first time, it's actually extremely intuitive. Whether I'm going to do a behavior depends on whether I think it will lead to good outcomes, whether people who I trust and value think I should do the behavior, and whether I think I'm actually capable of doing the behavior. Those three things influence my intention to do the behavior, and then my intention normally leads to the behavior itself. So there you have it, the theory of reasoned action and the theory of planned behavior. If you've got homework about this, if you've got a test, or if you're a practitioner trying to persuade people, this is a really useful theory. It's the most evidence-based theory of persuasion and behavior change. If you go to PubMed or you go to Google Scholar, you will find literally thousands of papers that use these theories to predict every conceivable behavior, especially health behaviors, but also voting behaviors and every other kind of consumer behavior. I hope you liked it. If you like this kind of video, go on over to howcommunicationworks.com. Give us your email address. We'll send you an ebook about empathy, and then we'll email you periodically, but not that often, about new YouTube videos and other offerings. Thanks so much for watching this video. I know your time is valuable. We'll see you next time.